How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. Take His Whistle podcast. We got another episode for you guys. We got some catching up to do from last week's rivalry week, and we got a preview for this week's conference championship game. So stay tuned. We'll see you guys in a couple seconds.
Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins! Oh my God! Anderson for the win! Right back! Armstrong with the football game!
Lets it fly.
Oh my goodness! Touchdown LSU! They win the game!
Back today, so I got time to be tripping and writing no love song. Yeah, writing no love song. We all experience love.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Take His Whistle podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, and as always, I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Parker.
What is up? What is up? A little congested today, but we're here. We're still pushing through.
Yes, sir. And today, as I said in the little pre-intro, we've got a review from last week's rivalry week, and then we've got some conference championship previews today, which I'm excited because, as everyone knows, my favorite team is in one of them today. A little nervous, but I'm excited, but also upset because we have to talk about last week. So we'll get to it, though, here in a moment. Parker, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You know, just really grinding out episodes and looking forward to where I see the potential. I see it. I see the diamond in the rough here. But yeah, let's get into this. Let's get it rolling. We got a couple games here in a few hours, and I'm excited for all of them. Really, there's not a bad game on the slate today.
All right, so starting off, I guess we'll go ahead and start off with the bad stuff. With rivalry week last week, me and Parker in attendance at Louisville Cardinals Stadium for the Louisville Kentucky rivalry game. One of the most underrated rivalries in the nation by far.
Oh my gosh, man.
But the Kentucky Wildcats take out number 10 Louisville Cardinals 38-31. On the bright side, a very good game. Honestly, a very good game. It made me very excited for the future of what's to come with this rivalry, and even with Kentucky having a down year, it really kind of sparked, I guess, it rekindled the rivalry sense in my head, because for a while, obviously, Kentucky's on this 5-year win streak, which is amazing. But before this year, the rivalry had kind of went stagnant, because Louisville was at a point where it was like they're just not very good. Yeah, they're just not very good, and we had to go through two separate coaches in a very short time span. In this 5-year time span, we've gone through two different coaches, and to lead us to this point in Jeff Brom, and Kentucky with Mark Stoops, which is also another story that we can get into in a little bit. But Mark Stoops, obviously, with what he's done with that program, turned it completely around, and he's got that program locked for this rivalry every year. So I'm very excited for years to come, because it's looking like it's finally good again every year. And I honestly, to be honest, I know I'm ranting a little bit to you, Parker, but I honestly don't have I honestly don't have many complaints for the game, because in my complete opinion, Louisville gave it away. We gave it away in the fourth quarter. We could have won that game if we wanted to, but we just gave it away. The only complaint I guess I could have, and maybe you know what's coming, Parker, is
Turnovers?
The penalties.
The penalties.
The refs, the penalties. Not necessarily because the refs were bad, but I just think that there could have been more penalties called on both teams. But again, I'm not trying to be biased here, but if you look at the game, Louisville had 3 penalties, which isn't a lot at all, but Kentucky had 0. And Kentucky is the first or second most penalized team in the SEC, I believe. And to say that they didn't commit a single penalty is a little wild, because me and Parker both, we've talked about it before, Parker, penalties happen all game, on both sides of the ball, both teams, all game. And to have not a single penalty for the entire game is a little ridiculous. But Again, not going to put it all on the penalties because we still could have won the game in the fourth quarter had we played a little bit better defense. But yeah, it is what it is. Not too upset because obviously we're playing today, and But
say it.
And you guys are. That's it. But what did you take away from last week? Because
to piggy off the penalty situation. Now, like you said, 3 penalties for Louisville. It's still really good. I mean, you think about it. If you have 3 penalties in your game, that's a really good game.
Yeah.
And then the 3 penalties that were caught on Louisville, I will say they were justified. That all of them were justified.
Yeah, I'm not arguing the calls that were called. The calls that were called are correct. They're right. They were penalties.
The missed calls are the problem.
The missed calls, yeah.
And I know you showed me a picture. I think it was like right after the game or something like that. We were heading home, and you showed me on. I think it was a Jamari Thrash deep ball that one of the Kentucky players were holding on to him. And to that, you like you said, Kentucky is one of the most penalized teams in the entire SEC. It has plagued us. It plagued us against South Carolina. It plagued us against Tennessee. Some really just bad penalties down the stretch, especially down the stretch in the second half. And maybe it was a clean game. Maybe to the refs it was a clean game. Obviously to the refs it was a clean game. But I'm just proud. I'm proud to be a Kentucky fan after that. Something like that. I mean, again, I would be one of the few to say that this was a disappointing season for Kentucky. I mean, 4 of our 5 losses all came from top 15 teams. 3 of them are inside the top 10 right now. So none of those 4 losses are necessarily bad losses. We just couldn't win those games. And some people think that we should have. Now, the only bad loss was the South Carolina one. But I think, honestly, it makes up for it for beating the number 10 team in the nation. We finally did win one of those big games, you know what I mean? And so, just, we talked about it last week, that the only way Kentucky beats Louisville is if they put everything together. And I didn't think it. I picked against Kentucky in the predictions. I thought Louisville was going to win it, but we put it all together. We finally offense, running game, passing game, our O-line, our defense, everything worked together. Special teams, everything came together, and that's how we were able to do it. It sucks that it was not our last game, but our last regular season game. We weren't able to see that team that showed up in Louisville against a Georgia, against a Missouri, against a Tennessee, Alabama. Like all those losses, I wish we could have seen I'm not saying we would have won those games if we played like that, but it would have been a much more competitive matchup and a better chance for Kentucky to win those games. But just overall, I have nothing but just good things to say about Kentucky. And then I even told you this, Josh, for Louisville side, I seriously, it's hard for Louisville fans to see it now, but I mean, everything could line up perfectly here in a few hours whenever Louisville kicks off against Florida State. This loss could have definitely humbled them. Definitely humbled them and got their heads on straight. Maybe they were just a little too cocky, sitting at 1 loss and clinching a ACC Championship game. They probably thought they were the shit. They thought that they were the best of the best. This Kentucky team comes in, they were like, hang on, no, let me bring Louisville back down to earth. And I genuinely think that is going to be a better thing in the long run for Louisville coming into this Florida State game today. Making them realize that, no, we're not the best team in the country. We are still overlooked. We still have things to work on. We have improvements. We can't just go out there and think that we're going to win and just win off pure talent, because that's not what's going to happen. I think that it's really just, overall, it is going to be a better thing for Louisville. Obviously, you don't want to lose. You want to beat your rival, Kentucky. You want, especially coming up 5 straight losses, 4 straight losses, whatever it is. You want to beat them, but you got to look at the bigger picture, and that is the ACC Championship, which is today.
Yeah, and and looking more specifically into the game too, like it was a weird game because nobody really stood out. Like both quarterbacks played great. In my opinion, Devin Leary, great game. Jack Plummer had a great game. Other than their 2 picks, obviously, I would probably argue
Stupid interception.
I would probably argue Leary's interception is a little bit worse than Plummer's, because Plummer's was that last
Plumbers
second.
was-
It was a last second heave, which you and me, by the way, when Leary threw that one, we were like, what? Like, why? What was that?
I was like, it was a moment of the game where like Kentucky genuinely, we had the momentum. We could have pulled away from that game right there and then just to throw all the momentum away in the dumbest way possible, like the most unnecessary 90-degree straight up in the air angle football thrown right into the Louisville hands, and like there wasn't a Kentucky player in sight. There wasn't like no one. There was like 3 Louisville players surrounding the ball. It was dumb. It was dumb.
Yeah. But if there was one player that I had to give the flowers to and say that they had an outstanding game, I would give them to Ray Davis, because he played great. Now, his stats might not reflect that, but if you were at the game or if you watched the game, you know how dominant he played. Louisville could not stop Ray Davis, whether it was receiving or rushing, especially in the red zone. If Kentucky got in the red zone, all they had to do was give it to Ray Davis, and it was an automatic touchdown almost every time. Ray Davis coming off of the game with 3 total touchdowns, 1 rushing, 2 receiving. And, I mean, it really is what it is. Obviously, we're moving on to this week, which I'll get more into a little later. But like you said, Parker, I think this loss does affect us in a positive light. I think it makes us really lock in for revenge, even though we can't play you guys 2 weeks in a row. I think it really locks us in, and we really want to prove something. And it sucks a little bit with the Jordan Travis injury and everything like that. It kind of diminishes us a little bit, I'd say, if we do win today. But at the same time, Florida State's still a great team, still an amazing team. That defense is still great. That offense, the weapons that they have, regardless of who's quarterback, is still a great team. But it does suck to see Jordan Travis go down like that. I think the game would have been a little bit more interesting with Jordan Travis, whether that's maybe a closer game or maybe we just get blown out. But either way, it sucks to see. But excited. But as far as the Kentucky-Louisville game goes, it seems like we had another Pitt-Louisville situation, because Louisville outgained Kentucky 403 to 289 on total yards on the day, and still somehow find a way to lose. So
wow, I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yeah. Which, it was just one of those days. The defense in the red zone was just better. Like I said on the pod last week, Parker, if Kentucky had big plays, which they did, they'd find a way to win. And they had big play after big play in that second half. So, it kind of all fell apart.
I was literally about to say that. Anytime that Louisville did start to get the momentum, and the main thing that I do want to touch on is like in that scenario is Louisville scored. It was like you guys were on the 1 yard line or something like that, and then it was like 4th down. You guys scored. You guys were up by 10, and I was like, oh boy, this is when Louisville pulls away. I was like, this isn't our year. Then Barry and Brown has the longest. I don't know if you knew this. It was the longest kickoff return in school history.
Oh, wow.
And he had it was 104 yards. It was either it tied it or it was the record. But Barry and Brown makes a huge play. Louisville comes right back down, scores a touchdown, goes back up by 10. What do? We give it to Isaiah Cummings, who breaks off like a 60-yarder to go down to like the 10-yard line. I think we ended up getting a field goal there, but still, just big plays and crucial moments that Kentucky was able to make.
Speaking of him, he actually just entered the transfer portal a couple days ago.
I saw that. I did see that. And I understand it. I mean, he's a great talent, but obviously this year he just wasn't utilized like he was expected to. And I mean, I'm sure the kid's got NFL hopes, Like, I'm sure he wants to make it to the NFL, and he probably thinks that Kentucky, just their offense and the way they're utilizing him, is not going to get it done. And so, I mean, I don't want to see him go, obviously, but at the same time, for a player perspective, I see exactly where he is coming from and why he decided to make that move into the portal.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely sucks to see players that you like enter their name in the transfer portal or leave to the draft, which we just spoke about him. Ray Davis officially declared for the NFL draft. Everyone knew it was coming. I mean, he didn't have another year of eligibility left, so everyone knew it was coming. I guess just seeing the actual article and the news and everything kind of hit a little bit harder, just because he's such a good player, and but even as a Louisville fan, I hope he does great things. I think he'll be good if he's given the shot. Just from seeing what he's done at Kentucky, but a great talent nonetheless. Obviously, watching him live twice this season was definitely a show because, I mean,
Both games that he went to, he went
personally, I feel like I watched his two best games this year. So
yeah, he really did.
It sucks that one of them was against my team, but it is what it is, like I said. But moving on, though, Parker, we've got some other rivalries we got to cover real quick before we get into this week. Ohio State can't get it done against Michigan. They fall 30-24. They lose to Michigan for the fourth straight year, I believe it was. Ryan Day just can't get it done. Just can't get it done.
If you're asking me, he might have just signed his farewell card as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's just not a rivalry that you can lose 4 weeks or 4 years in a row.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, man. I mean, and especially a year like this, where regardless of what people have said, Michigan has been above Ohio State. I mean, maybe at the very beginning of the year they had Ohio State above Michigan, but this whole year, for the most part, Michigan has always been above Ohio State, and so you have that chip on your shoulder. People are still saying Michigan's better than you. Some people do say Ohio State was better, or was saying Ohio State was better, and then so obviously the game comes and it was a close one. It wasn't like it was a blowout. So I mean that is something to kind of, I guess, have an accomplished for, maybe being at the big house. But a close game. But not only did you guys lose to your rivals, your most hated rival was probably the most heated rivalry in college football, you might have sealed your fate in not making the playoffs. Now, that's something I do want to get in later in the episode, because I think that there is a shot that Ohio State could still make the playoffs. I know me and you, Josh, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, or last night during the Washington-Oregon game, but I think there is a chance they could make the playoffs, but this game really kind of, if they don't make it, there's a clear reason why, and it's because they can't beat Michigan, and it's starting to be a repeated factor that I'm sure a lot of people in Ohio is not happy about whatsoever.
Yeah, and on top of that, on top of Ryan Day's situation that he's in right now, I didn't watch the game personally because it was at the same time as our game. But looking at Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, after the game, I saw a lot of hate for Kyle McCord just because apparently I guess he played terrible. I know that
picks.
Yeah, he threw 2 picks, and I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it seemed like he threw them both at very crucial times in the game. And so it just didn't. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but if that is, I mean, if they don't make the playoffs, then we could definitely see Ryan Day potentially getting fired because, like we said, it's just not a rivalry that you can win 4 years or lose 4 years in a row in, and it's one of those things where if you can't get over that hump, then can you even get over the hump of winning the national championship? Because,
right.
I mean, but yeah, for a rivalry with so many playoff implications, it seems, every year. I mean, this rivalry has playoff implications every year. Ohio State and Michigan has been 2-3, 3-4, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, however it may be. They've been in the top 4 for the past 4 years. And obviously, Ohio State still made it last year, and Michigan did, I think. I might be talking about 2 years ago. But
I think that was 2 years ago. I don't think – no, you're right. Ohio State and Michigan both made it, yeah. Ohio State and Michigan.
When Ohio State missed the game-winning kick?
Yeah, both of them
was that
made
last year? Okay, yeah. So obviously they both made it last year, but then comes this year where – you lose the rivalry game, and now you're potentially out. So it sucks for Ohio State, but
it's a very similar situation to last year. Like, I mean, Ohio State basically has to depend on other teams doing their dirty work. You know, they're just basically gonna get in there for free, just for beating up on all the little teams in the Big Ten. You know, so
Ohio State needs all the underdogs to lose or win.
Yeah. They and again, I do want to get into it later on because I think there is a path for it, but there's also more signs to not for them not getting in my opinion. But I do want to ask you this. If Ryan Day is fired, do you think, and you said the amount of hate that Kyle McCord received after that game, do you think that we could see him entering the transfer portal?
McCord?
Yeah.
I would say no, personally, just because he's the starter. I don't think he's going to lose that job. I don't know specifically what year he's in, but I'd assume he's coming back next year.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say no, just because if you've already got that starting job solidified, I don't see why you would transfer to a different school, especially when you're at a school like Ohio State.
He's a junior.
He's a junior? Okay, so I'm probably going to say that he's coming back next year because I don't think his draft stock's touching any of the other guys, especially the guy he lost to in that game. So I would say he probably stays. And I know I said that there's a chance that he could be gone, but in all honesty, I really don't think Ryan Day will be fired. Just because he's consistently had Ohio State. Granted, it's a loss every year, but he's kept them consistently in the playoffs or, a top-ranked team. So it really just depends on what the Ohio State boosters and that athletic office, how they feel. But, we'll see because the offseason is yet to come. So.
And it's already crazy.
It's already crazy.
It's going to be a crazy year this offseason, for sure.
Which, after we get done previewing last week's games, there is a topic that I want to talk about very briefly.
As far as this past week, I think really the other game that I necessarily do want to touch on was the Iron Bowl. Alabama in Alabama fashion. No, I shouldn't even say Alabama fashion. Just Iron Bowl fashion. Win on a last-second touchdown. First of all, Josh, I'm sure you saw the play that they scored on, right?
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
Yeah. And, Auburn historically has so many good last-second plays to win games. I mean, to think the way they beat Alabama just a few years ago on the field goal that was short, that they returned for a touchdown. I think they had like a lateral like Hail Mary type play last second. I don't think it was against Alabama, but just Auburn in general. Auburn always finds the way to win in the craziest ways possible. This year, they got the revenge given back to them with that last second touchdown in Auburn as well. So people were pissed about that. I mean, hey, all credit to Auburn though. I didn't think, especially with Alabama, how much Alabama just has to be perfect for them to have a chance to make the playoffs. Another team that's in that hunt for that last spot, in my opinion. I mean, a team that had to be perfect. They had to handle business, and really they had to kill Auburn. They had to make it look as good as possible. Auburn came in. They were standing on business. They only lost by 3. I mean, what does this mean for Auburn? What does this mean for the rivalry? And just, I guess, what does it mean for Auburn or Alabama as well going into the championship week this week?
Well, certainly it means a lot for Alabama because now they're not a 2-loss team, which they very well could have been had Auburn played slightly better defense. I don't know how you let up a game-winning touchdown on, 4th and 20? Like, it was 4th down, and you let up a game-winning touchdown that wasn't at the goal line. They were damn near at midfield. So yeah. I don't know how you do that, but like you said, in Iron Bowl fashion, it happened. But certainly Alabama's coming into this SEC championship with tons of momentum because they're coming off of an escape win at Auburn, and now they have to go play Georgia. And if they beat Georgia, then that's a lot of chaos. That's a lot of chaos that's going to happen. And when I say that, I don't mean in the sense that Georgia is going to fall out of the playoffs. I just mean that fourth spot in the playoffs is going to be an interesting conversation. But yeah.
In my opinion, I don't know if you want to go down this road just yet. But if Alabama wins today at 4:00, we can basically we don't. I'm sorry, but the ACC Championship game doesn't even matter. I genuinely think if Alabama beats Georgia, then the playoffs are locked. Obviously, granted, Michigan losing to Iowa, which I don't think will happen. But I think if Alabama does beat Georgia, Alabama and Georgia are both in the playoffs. And unfortunately for Florida State, if Florida State does beat Louisville, it's the biggest screw job and probably in college football history. You know, I mean, it's a Power 5 conference that went undefeated, and they don't.
It's an interesting conversation that I've seen because I think a lot of people think that way. That you're saying, I think that's probably the popular consensus. If Alabama beats Georgia, that's probably I think what most people would say is going to be the top 4. But it brings up an interesting conversation as to why is Florida State getting kicked out? Is it because of Jordan Travis being hurt and they don't have their starting quarterback, their star player, their Heisman player that was in the Heisman race all year? Or is it because they genuinely just aren't one of the top 4 teams? But at the same time, I said this over a text last night, Parker, like you said, we were having a conversation last night. Can you leave a Power 5 conference champion out?
100%. We've seen it so many times. We've seen it so many times in the past. I mean, and obviously, I mean, there is circumstances, right? I mean, if there was a Power 5 conference champion, like if Louisville won, right, Louisville still wouldn't make the playoffs.
So let me rephrase it. Can you leave an undefeated Power 5 conference champion out?
Right. And I think to the committee, the Jordan Travis thing could be a factor. But the main thing holding Florida State down, which I've said it all year long, is just the ACC is struggling this year. They just aren't that good, you know? The teams that we thought were good in the ACC turned out not necessarily to be. They fell off pretty hard towards the end of the year, mainly Duke and North Carolina as the main two. But, I mean, NC State jumped up there. I think isn't NC State number 3?
Yeah, NC State's number 3 in the ACC, yeah.
Yeah. So that just proves my point. I mean, Florida State, I guess they have a couple quality wins, but I mean, compared to your Alabamas, compared to your Georgias, Michigans, Washington, Ohio States, I think that their schedules just kind of by leaps and bounds beat them, and I think that's the main reason holding them back. I mean, you can't. I mean, yes, to like I said, it's the biggest screw job because it's a Power 5 conference that goes undefeated in Florida State. But also at the same time, you can't just be throwing any undefeated team in there because you need the best of the best. You need the 4 best teams to play each other.
Well, here's an interesting question. So right now, Florida State is number 4. They are number 4 right now. If they win against Louisville, but Alabama wins, do they drop from 4?
Yes. In my opinion, yes.
Even though they're already 4?
Yeah, because, I mean, Alabama beating Georgia is a much better win than Florida State beating Louisville.
Yeah.
Especially, which this is a whole topic that I could rant on about, and I hate bringing it up just to the fact of it's already over and it doesn't matter now. Josh, me and you, we talked about it briefly before the Louisville Kentucky game about Louisville's chances of making the playoffs if they were to beat Kentucky. And well, now it's 0. Now it is 0.
No,
yes,
even before, I was one of the fans that was saying we had no shot because there was just too many things that had to happen.
But now, if we are looking at it, if Louisville were to win last week and everything still shaped out the way it did, dude, Louisville, in my opinion, would have such a interesting case to make that final spot. And let me break this down for you really quick. So the same things happen. Washington beats Oregon, right? So Washington is a lock. Oregon drops, right? Georgia, Alabama plays. Georgia wins. Let's just say Georgia wins. Alabama drops. Georgia's a lock. Michigan beats Iowa. Iowa doesn't have a chance no matter what, even if they did win, but Michigan is a lock. So those 3 teams are locked. So now your final, if you look at it, your final 3 teams are between Florida State, I'm sorry. Let's say Louisville beats Florida State as well in the championship today. Your final 3 teams are between Florida State, Louisville, and Ohio State. Those I feel are, and if that everything played out the way it did, those are the 3 teams that had still a shot to make the last spot. Do you agree with me?
Texas.
Texas, yes, Texas as well. But still, we can throw Texas in there. We can throw Texas in there. Which actually, you know, who do they play? They play Oklahoma State, and I think they're actually playing right now.
They are. Yeah, they're playing right now.
I mean, Oklahoma State already beat Oklahoma, so I mean, it's not too crazy for Oklahoma State to beat Texas, upset Texas. I don't know what the score of that game is. I haven't looked at it.
It's 28-7 in the second quarter. Texas. Yeah, Texas.
Oh boy. Okay. But anyways, let's just say Oklahoma State pulled off the upset. Texas drops. They're no longer in the conversation. Oklahoma State didn't have a shot no matter what. So now your final 3 teams to get that last spot is Louisville, Ohio State, and Florida State. And everything up until this point is fairly realistic that could happen. You know, like nothing is too out of the ordinary. That's like, no, there's no way of happening. So then you break down.
I guess I can see where you're going with this. If Louisville were to beat Florida State, you have those 3 final teams. You have a conference champion that with a 1-loss. You have a 1-loss conference champion and a 1-loss runner-up conference, whatever, and then you have a 1-loss didn't even make their conference championship. I believe that's where you were going with that, right?
Yeah.
So
and then Louisville jumps Florida State.
Yeah.
Louisville jumps Florida State.
Then it would be between Ohio State, Louisville.
And Louisville.
Personally, as a Louisville fan, I don't think you should leave us out because I think that resume warrants getting in, I believe. But at the same time, if I'm the committee and I'm thinking about, like, you know, money, I'm probably putting Ohio State in, because if Ohio State and Michigan can play again in the championship, oh fuck, that is just gonna be, that's so much money for the committee.
It is, and I agree with you. But if you are looking past the views and the ratings, Louisville has a damn good case. Obviously, everything is mute. It doesn't matter. They have a damn good case of getting in over Ohio State. And I genuinely think it was a serious possibility. That's something that, like I said, before, like an hour before the Kentucky-Louisville game even kicked off, we said there was no shot of Louisville really making the playoffs. They had no business being there. And now, at that way everything has shaped out to be, man, I hate bringing it up now that the point is mute, but like, I think we really underestimated how good of chances Louisville had to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
Well, this is a good segue right here. A sweet transition I'm about to hit you with. It's a great lead up to Oregon, Washington. A lot of people thought Oregon were going to beat Washington. Oregon was a 10-point favorite going into that game. Everyone thought, or everyone, except for maybe you, because I know you're a huge Washington fan. I know you're a huge Penix fan. Everyone else in the world thought Oregon was going to win, and they did not. And it was a very good game.
What warranted in the I think it was like 28 days since they played, what warranted Washington beating Oregon, and then the next time they play, Oregon is a heavy favorite, even though they've already played each other?
I think it's because if you look at the way they were both playing after they played each other, Oregon was curb stomping everyone they played. Dominating everyone. Their defense looked incredible, and Washington was barely sneaking by on most teams. I'm honestly gonna look at it because I'm interested.
Their last 5 games have only been won.
Yeah, so they beat Oregon by 3, And then they beat Arizona State immediately after by 1 possession. They beat Stanford by 1 possession, maybe 2. They beat USC by 10, so 2 possessions. They beat Utah by 1 possession. They beat Oregon State by 2. They beat Washington State by 3. They were scraping by against these teams. Whereas Oregon, if you look at Oregon, they lost to Washington by 3 on October 14th. After that, they beat Washington State 38-24. They beat Utah 35-6. They beat Cal 63-19. They beat USC 36-27. They beat Arizona State 49-13. Mind you, these are teams that Washington was barely scraping by. Arizona State being one of them, Washington State being one of them, Stanford being one of them. And then they beat Oregon State 31-7, who Washington also scraped by. So I think that was just one of those things where everyone was looking at it going, well, obviously Oregon should win this game, right? They've played significantly better since the last time they played. And obviously they go in last night and they can't get it done. Bo Nix had a great game. Bo Nix played great. I
did say I watched the game. That was a game that Bo Nix did. He struggled fairly heavy in the whole first half, but mainly that first quarter. He struggled pretty bad.
Yeah, but he's no longer the Heisman favorite though.
Which is another topic that I would love to have with you right now. So does the championship game does that I guess that does count for the Heisman race? Is that right?
I guess it does, but I didn't think it did because there's players in the Heisman race that don't play in their conference championship.
Correct. Right.
So I always thought that it wasn't that way, but I guess it does. But now after this loss,
and then on top of this, the fact that they're still not putting Michael Penix as the favorite. They're going to drop Bo Nix after the loss, but you're not going to put Michael Penix as a favorite. I'm sorry, it's just it's bullshit.
Which Michael Penix played great too, but
he played so good.
I think it's maybe I honestly can't see the vision from a voter's perspective or from a committee's perspective, but Michael Penix, 319 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Maybe they're seeing that 1 touchdown. Maybe they're just box score watching. Because if you see 1 passing touchdown, you're like, oh, he didn't even play that great. But he had 319 passing yards, and he played great. He played a great game. Obviously, their running back had a great game too. Washington's did. Mm-hmm. But still, I mean, he had 2 receivers over 100 yards. And I don't know how the Heisman race works. Again, I didn't think conference championships contributed to it because now Daniels is the favorite and he's not playing in one. He doesn't play for another week. So I don't know. Maybe they changed it recently, but it's definitely weird to me.
But that's also so just kind of crappy. I mean, I guess if I don't know, because like now that if they're playing and if they're counting the conference championship games, I mean, what's saying that they're not counting the playoff games? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like, what if like at the end of the day, Michael Penix plays 2 more games than Jaden Daniels does, and those 2 games he plays terrible. He plays absolutely horrific. Well, I mean, who's to say that Jaden Daniels wouldn't have played horrific as well? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you just, I don't know, man. I don't agree with it, and it also could just because I am Michael Penix bias.
It's like the MVP award in the NFL or the NBA. Like, you should only look at the regular season. You shouldn't be looking at all this postseason stuff and being like, oh, well, obviously he's not the Heisman winner anymore because he didn't win his conference championship. That's not the regular season. That's technically the postseason. So, like, I wouldn't count it, but at the same time, I also didn't have Bo Nix as my favorite for the Heisman winner. So
neither of us did.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I guess they had they did have a really good offense. I will say that, but I mean, just after the head-to-head matchup between Penix and Nix the first game, I was like, I just didn't see a world where Bo Nix ever won the Heisman, especially over Penix. Now, the Penix-Daniels debate, I'm all about. I'm all about that debate. But I never saw Bo Nix being up there with either one of those two, in my honest opinion.
Imagine if we got a Auburn Bo Nix versus an Indiana Penix matchup. That would have been cool.
Yeah. I
don't know
how it would work.
I find it very interesting that we have players.
I want to see round 3.
You want to see? Maybe we'll get one in the league. Who knows?
No, I'm saying this year. I want to see a round 3 this year. I don't know how it's possible. But I don't think it is possible, but I want to see it.
I think all the favorites would have to lose, and then all the underdogs that beat them would all just have to die. Their entire teams would just have to pass away, and then Oregon could make the playoffs and play Washington again.
It's possible, man. It's possible.
No, dude, we can't put that out in the world. Come on now. But it's interesting to me how we have these two players who are in the top of the Heisman race. But you look at a couple years ago, and they were like 10 years ago for Bo Nix. But for Penix, you looked a couple years ago, and he's at a different school. And it's interesting to me how these guys can go to a different school now and almost immediately just become a different player, a different tier of a player. But I guess that's, how the transfer portal works nowadays. And,
we've seen it. We've seen it so many times. I mean, like the one close to home. I mean, Will Levis. Mm-hmm. He was much better at Kentucky than he was Penn State. Joe Burrow went from Ohio State to LSU and was arguably a part of the greatest college football team ever. Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts is another one. Jalen Hurts, when he came to Alabama. When he came to Alabama. Who did he come from? Did he come from Ohio State?
He came from Oklahoma. No,
that's right, yeah.
He transferred from Alabama to Oklahoma.
Okay. Yeah, but you saw that big step forward. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There was a big step forward once he transferred. So I mean
Jaden Daniels, the other Heisman candidate from Arizona State to LSU, and he's unlocking this entire new ability.
So I mean, the easy answer there is just, I guess just play styles potentially. I mean, obviously all these quarterbacks are phenomenal talents. They're the best at what they do. You know what I mean? That's why they're quarterbacks of a hefty Division I school. They're the best at being the best. So the talent's there. I think it's more or less just the fit and the play style that really just unlocks that next tier, that next level of just dog.
Yeah, it's I actually saw talking about like player ages nowadays, because there's I saw an Instagram post the other day about a quarterback for one of the Florida like Atlantic schools or something like that, and this guy got approved for his 7th year of eligibility for college football.
That lineman for Kentucky as well. He's coming back for his 7th year.
Yeah, these guys are like 26 already. Like,
it's a whole NFL career that you're playing in college.
I think at that point you probably know you're not going to the league at that point, so you're probably
just taking in the moments.
You're just taking in the moments. But I saw a post the other day of Jaden Daniels when he was at Arizona State. And it was when they upset Oregon, when Oregon was ranked like number 6 or something like that a few years ago. And it was Jaden Daniels throwing a touchdown pass to Brandon Ayuk, who's now in the league on the 49ers, who I feel like has been
there for a while.
Yeah, who I feel like has been in the league for like 3-4 years. So I see clips like that, and I'm like, dude, how old are these motherfuckers? Because these dudes are like 4 or 5 years into their NFL career, and they still have a teammate that's playing in college. And I'm like, oh, God, dude, like, what is going on?
And then what's really crazy is that you look over at the basketball world, college basketball scene, and then like these 18-year-olds are going to the league, and like you'd be so happy to see a 20-year-old on your roster, which is just crazy. Like, if you see a 21-year-old on your team, you're like, oh my God, we're gonna be so good this year. We got so much experience. Now we got 40-year-olds. We got 40-year-olds playing college football, man. They got a wife and 3 kids. I mean, it's I don't know if I like it or love it. What do you like the
So
older?
this is actually the conversation I wanted to have earlier when I said I want to have a conversation in between the transition. The transfer portal, because recruiting used to be such a huge thing. Like, it was all recruiting. It was recruiting. Like, you always wanted to be good at recruiting because that is how you got good. Now, you have teams like Louisville who rebuilt their entire roster in the offseason in 3 months. Something like that, 3-4 months. Give or take 3-4 months, they rebuilt their entire roster. And then they jumped from an unranked team, a mid-level team, to an ACC Championship contender team. And before last week, a playoff hopeful team. So
right.
I find it good in the sense that teams can become good pretty much immediately if they have the right coaching, if they have the right staff. I think that also helps out a lot. I think Louisville has a great coach. I think they have a great coaching staff. I think that helps out a lot. But at the same time, when you have players like I'm blanking on his name, but when you have players transferring to your school and then immediately transferring back out after that year, I find it to be very annoying. Like, there's no loyalty. There's no loyalty in college football anymore because anybody and everybody will transfer out after 1 year. If they get 1 minute of less playing time than they wanted, they'll transfer out. And that's just how it is nowadays because there's no transfer rules. There's no restrictions. You can transfer, go somewhere else, and immediately play. Same way in basketball. So
yes.
I find myself, and let me pause real quick because I just want to say I do get excited. I get excited about the transfer portal. I check Twitter every day for new people entering their name. I check Twitter every day for new recruits that drop their top 5. But you want to know why I hate it? Here's specifically why I hate it. Here's specifically why I hate the transfer portal. And I've talked to you about this before many times, Parker. Louisville has a freshman QB on their roster right now. They have a freshman coming in next year, when the freshman that I'm talking about right now will be a sophomore. I assume the freshman that I'm talking about Pierce Clarkson. He's on the Louisville Cardinals right now. He was a 4-star freshman that we got in last year. Great player. I see fans on Twitter saying that instead of letting this guy that we tried our hardest to recruit, like he was one of our top priorities to get to Louisville. And I see fans on Twitter saying, I wonder what transfer portal quarterback we're going to get. Why are we just going to rely on the transfer portal to get a quarterback every single year?
Look at the University of Kentucky.
Yeah, we can't raise talents now and make talents better that we recruited. We went out and specifically recruited this guy, and we don't trust this guy enough to give him his shot, even though he's been sitting on the bench for a year learning the system and been waiting his turn. And it sucks because if he doesn't get the start this year, in my personal opinion, yeah, it's bye-bye. He's gone. He's transferring. And that's how it is. So I don't want to transfer quarterback. Personally, as a Louisville fan for Louisville, I don't want to transfer quarterback because I want Pierce to get his shot, or I want this freshman coming in to get his shot because they're both very good players. And I don't want a transfer portal guy that's 27 because even if they could be very good, and if they're very good, then that's fine. Like if they're insane, like if they're a Caleb Williams caliber player or a Jaden Daniels caliber player who transferred somewhere and became great, that's great. But a lot of these transfer portal guys only have 1 year of eligibility left. So what's the fucking point? Just get a guy that you can start for 2 or 3 years, and even if his first year isn't that great, at least you have another year of him, and he can progress even more in the offseason. I don't like this process of getting a guy, him leaving, and then immediately getting another guy, and then him leaving, and just repeating the process. It's annoying, repetitive, and I don't like it. But at the same time, it can be beneficial, and we've seen that this year with Louisville.
I have a lot to unpack here. So, it is a lot like you said, it's becoming college basketball 2.0. And this has been a problem, and a lot of people dislike about the University of Kentucky, our basketball program. John Calipari. He recruits to send guys to the NBA. So you get this amazing class, and like you said, you love it. You love seeing it. You love seeing these recruits. Dude, you like I've been so high on this Kentucky basketball team for so long now because we have such a good recruiting class, and we're just gonna be so good, and we are good. Come this time next year, there might be 1, maybe 2 players on the current roster on this year's team. So all year long, you're rooting for these guys. Their senior year of high school until now, you're rooting for them. You want to see them do good. You want them to have a good future. You really do. You fall in love with these guys, and the next thing you know, they're gone. They're just gone, just like that. And you're like, oh my God, now we just got to restart. Now I got to learn everybody's names again and faces and all their play styles, everything like that. You got every year. And that was the beauty of college football. College football did not have a one and done rule. Besides we'll get to that, but like they didn't have that. You can just leave after 1 year. Like team players did not do that, and so then you would fall in love with players. The running back who is a local kid who just blew up out of nowhere, and he's a senior, and all he loves is his school, and he's been there for 4 or 5 years. You just absolutely love it. You love it. And then it's his senior year. You want to see him do good after his senior year. Now it is becoming a lot like college basketball, players are, even if they do succeed, you see players that break out 1 year and then they'll go on to a bigger program or a better program or a different program, just even like a lower tier. Like you see players leave regardless if they struggle or they do really good, and so off the top of my head, especially with how relatively new the transfer portal is, I don't know a way to stop it unless you literally just lay down the law and say, if you transfer, you have to stay there 2 years, unless you're a senior, And then, that's the only thing that I can think of to really stop it, And I don't even know if that would really even stop it truly at that point. And then, for your point about Pierce Clarkson, I totally agree with, if you do not have a quarterback that you trust going into this year, that is what the transfer portal is there for. It is supposed to help you build rosters, improve your rosters, and maybe even find some gems. So let's go back a couple years to when Kentucky got Will Levis. Who in the hell is going to be our starting quarterback if we did not get Levis? We did not go into the transfer portal to get a quarterback. So we got Levis. Levis stays for 2 years. 2 extremely fun years. It was awesome seeing Levis break out in a Kentucky jersey. Well, then after Levis is gone, you're stuck with this problem. Who is going to be our quarterback? I think the backup that we have, I think he's not very good, but I don't know. We only saw him like once or twice this year. So you went out and got Devin Leary. Obviously, Devin Leary didn't shape out the way he did, but the next 2 years, the next 2 recruiting classes, we have 2 4-star quarterbacks that have already committed. They haven't signed, but they have committed. I think one of them is 100% a lock in Cutter Boley. He's a lock to come here. I don't see him going anywhere else. But the other one, Stone Saunders, he could potentially flip. I don't know what his commitment is to the university. He's not from Kentucky or anything like that, so I could definitely see him flipping. But we have 2 4-star quarterbacks that are supposed to be coming in. You just want to like you said, you just want to get transfers that are already proven just to get us 2 more wins on the year. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like these teams are depending on other schools to develop quarterbacks or players, and then we just take them from them. It's like you said, like all these schools are going away from developing players, making these players into really good players. And for Kentucky's standpoint, we never really had a history of making good quarterbacks like Louisville did. Louisville had Bridgewater and Jackson just too recently. Kentucky never really had that luxury of just developing quarterbacks. But I mean, it's a very strong love-hate relationship in my opinion, you know, and I feel like you feel the same way about it. I don't know what the answer is to help it or improve it, but yeah,
and that might just be a personal fan thing. Like, I just really like Pierce. He's a good kid. He's a great kid, and I just want to see him play. I just want to see him start. And at the same time, like, I really like him. I think he's a good player, but at the same time, how are we gonna know? How are we ever gonna know? And he's a fan favorite. At the Louisville Murray State game at the beginning of the season, when we played like all 8 of our quarterbacks that we have on our roster, which half of them are transfers, all of them, you know, got like somewhat, you know, good cheers. But the moment Pierce came into the game and his name was announced, the place erupted. Like, Louisville loves Pierce Clarkson. And I think he loves Louisville. His dad loves Louisville. His dad's tweeting about Louisville all the time. His dad's a huge advocate for our NIL program. So, and he's a great recruiter too. Like, he's a great player recruiter. Like, he knows so many people. But I want to see him play. And I would like us to wait until practice comes, like during spring practice or something like that. And if he doesn't look like he's going to pan out, if he doesn't look that great, then fine. You can go get a transfer portal QB if there's any in there. But I would hope that they wait a little bit and see how he's going to do first before they just immediately jump the gun and go get another quarterback and force this kid to wait another year. Which I see a lot of fans saying that if we bring in a transfer QB, then it'll just be better competition. And if he really is good, then he'll win the starting job even over a transfer portal quarterback. But I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think our talent against Jack Plummer was that great this year. So I think Jack Plummer kind of fell into a really good situation here. Because, you know, Pierce was a freshman. So I don't think he was really going to get any playing time anyways. But everyone else, you know, I just don't think anybody else was really touching Jack Plummer, which could say a lot considering how Jack Plummer was seen by a lot of fans this year. But I can see that point. I get that. But at the end of the day, if Pierce is slightly better, we could very well see a coach pick the experience and the more game manager type rather than the guy who's a little bit more skilled. Yeah.
And maybe this is one thing that neither of us know. We have no idea of knowing is, I mean, those coaches are with him every single day, seeing him play, seeing him practice, seeing him develop. And like you said, maybe he just is struggling in practice. Maybe he is too immature, you know? Maybe he's just goofing off in practice. Or he's just literally just struggling behind other quarterbacks on the team. And so that's something we will never know. And it's a question that will always be asked for star players that don't get the playing time, either college level or professional level. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And just maybe, it's something just to think about, is maybe Pierce Clarkson is... something's going on that we don't know about that is resulting him, his coaches, other players not necessarily giving him another shot.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's an interesting situation. But going off of that though, Parker, would you like to go over some of these conference championship games this week and see where we're at with some of these games and some of these teams and see what we think might happen?
Yeah. Do you want to kind of call this our predictions?
Yeah, they could be our predictions as well if you're down.
Okay. So I want to bring this up. I have tallied up since our first college football episode until now. All the totals, the win-loss record between me, Josh, and our guest last week, Caleb. And let me say, Caleb is off to a phenomenal start for any future guest that we do have. And it could have been better. It really could have, because one of his picks that he got wrong was Vanderbilt over Tennessee. For whatever reason, he picked Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee. Don't know why. But Caleb finished the week 14-3. Really good performance from Caleb. But me and you, Josh, since I think that this is our 7th or 8th episode, I'm sitting at a record of 71-23, which I'm proud of. I think that's good, man. I think that's really freaking good
that's
to go
good.
71-23. But here's the thing: you are right on my ass. There has not been separation. You were sitting at 69-25. I'm only 2 games up on you. So only a few games left. A few weeks left. I guess we can kind of still go week by week on the games if you still want to. But I mean, it's not over. If I have a bad week, if we, which I don't think we're gonna really disagree this week too much, but it's not over by a long shot, you know.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's exciting. Well, this is a very close race. Caleb having a 14-3 record is crazy, though. That's a hell of a start for the guest record.
Yeah, and then all of his, I mean, besides that Tennessee loss, he picked Louisville over Kentucky, and then he also picked Ohio State over Michigan. Which, I mean, I never saw a world where he was going to pick Kentucky over Louisville. But, the Michigan State game, that was a 50-50 at the end of the day. So, I mean, he could have only had one missed pick this week, which is, or last week, which is just absurd to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, to see that both of us have struggled.
Yeah. Okay, so as far as this week goes, Parker, since there's already 2 games going on right now and 2 games have already been played, we're just going to go with the 4 that haven't been played, if you're okay with that, because it's kind of...
I like those 3 anyway. 3 of the 4 anyways, more.
Okay. So, we'll start with SMU and Tulane for the... What championship is that? What conference are they in?
That is the AAC
The American Conference. The American Conference Championship. Who you got in that one?
You know, I mean, I know the Mustangs are they're heading to the ACC next year. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of just their farewell tour, but
Pretty much.
On the other side, Tulane has. I mean, I know past podcasts we have talked about them briefly when we've been making picks. They continue to win. So I don't know too much about either team still, but I am going to go ahead and take Tulane in this one, just simply from the fact that I don't know too much about either team.
So, as far as I know, SMU is on a hell of a streak right now. Something like a 7-game win streak, I think.
Oh, wow.
And their only 2 losses are against, against Oklahoma and TCU.
So 2 really good opponents.
Two okay losses, yeah. Obviously the Oklahoma one's better than the TCU one, but
oh yeah.
But they've been winning their games like reasonably dominant. Yeah. The most notable one being 69-10 over Tulsa, or even 55-0 against Temple.
55-0 over Temple. Yeah.
So I think it could actually be very interesting. I think I'm gonna, for the sake of division, because we might agree on teams for the next 3. Maybe you might say Florida State for the ACC one, but for the sake of division, I'm gonna go SMU. I think SMU has a successful farewell tour, and I think they take that conference, and I think they take the trophy with them to the ACC.
Yeah, I wish I would have done a little bit more research, because I'm not gonna flip it. I'm staying with my gut, but I think I would have picked SMU if I did just the slightest bit of research on them, but I did not.
Which, I guess, just to further add to my point, Tulane only beat Tulsa by 4, and SMU shit on Tulsa. So, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good game. Maybe that's game of the week. Who knows?
Imagine that's like a 7 overtime game.
Yeah, imagine.
The 4
All right.
o'clock game leads on to the Louisville game until it's like a 4-hour
Yeah.
game.
Alrighty. So the next one, probably gonna be the best one if we're being honest. We got Georgia against Alabama in the SEC Championship.
This one kicks off just in around 2 hours from now, really, is whenever this game kicks off. Here we go. I'm just going to say it straight out. I'm taking Alabama. I'm taking Alabama in this game. I think, obviously, they struggled at the beginning of the year. There's no question about it. They didn't have a quarterback for the first how many ever weeks. But since Milroe has started, heating up, and they've gotten the offense together, I genuinely think Alabama has looked better than Georgia. Like, honestly. And on top of it, I think that the SEC West is better than the SEC East. So I think that they have played and beat better teams than Georgia has beat. I'm rooting for the road side today. I kind of want it to go a little berserk in the playoffs, because that would actually change everything up if somehow Alabama pulls off the win. But yeah. I'm taking Alabama here. The streak is over for the Bulldogs.
Okay. In the same way that you said Alabama has been dominant in the second half of the season, I see the same thing in Georgia. At some point, a switch flipped, and Georgia realized that, oh, hey, we actually are the number one team in the nation. And then they just started dog walking everyone. I obviously don't think they're going to dog walk Alabama. But I think Georgia's just an all-around better team than Alabama. Yeah, I'm going to take Georgia in a close game. But I'm going to take Georgia. I think they keep the streak going. But will not be mad if Alabama wins.
I think one thing kind of drove me away from Georgia is Georgia Tech gave Georgia everything they wanted and more. And maybe they were just playing down to them and they were not trying as hard as they probably were or should have. But man, I think in the last week, all three of us said that we thought Georgia was going to win by maybe 30 or more. And they barely snuck out a win. You know what I mean? And it's rivalries. Always means something, always shakes some stuff up, but yeah, I think that's what's my driving factor away, is that they almost lost to a pretty bad Georgia Tech team.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so I'm taking Georgia, you're taking Bama, I'm taking SMU, you're taking Tulane, and you'll be over at the house for those games, so we'll be able to watch them.
Yes.
So here we go. Louisville versus Florida State in the ACC Championship, and Louisville's first ever ACC Championship. I'm excited.
You're going first on this one.
I'm going first?
Yep.
Okay. I think everyone knows who I'm going. Let me explain why, though. Florida State has no Jordan Travis, and they potentially have no Roadmaker, because Roadmaker is a game-time decision today with a concussion. He took a very hard hit last week in their game against whatever Alabama it was. The same game that Jordan Travis went down in. Wait, no, sorry.
No, the game after.
Roadmaker took a huge hit in Florida the game before that Jordan Travis got hurt. So they've had two QBs go down back-to-back weeks. Now he's a game-time. Now their second string is a game-time decision. They might have to come into this game with a third-string quarterback who has no playing time this year, except for maybe a couple snaps last week. I am going to say Louisville because I think Florida State is a little too hurt to win this game. But at the same time, in order for Florida State to win, all they need to really happen is for their QB to be a good game manager. If their QB is a good game manager, they have all the weapons in the world on that offense, and their defense is great, led by Jared Verse. That defense is a very good defense. I don't think it'll be a shootout. I don't think it'll be a shootout. I think it'll be whatever defense plays best. And I think it could be a game in the trenches. I think it could be a run game. Whoever has the better running game, I think, could win this game as well.
Not to scare you, but that's what you all said about the Kentucky game.
It is. But if you look at that game, though, you guys had a better run game that week. Statistically, you did. But I think this is a Louisville Kentucky situation. I think Louisville's going to need big plays in order to win. I'm taking Louisville. I'm locking it in. No world am I turning my pick around, but I am nervous.
Me, on the other hand, I am actually taking Louisville. I think that Louisville is going to win this game. Now, there is definitely a chance that I'm eating my words, and I probably should have picked Florida State from the beginning. But I think that like you said, it could be, what team are we getting from Louisville, you know? And I'm curious. So you guys beat up on all these ACC schools, which debatably some of them, how good they are is very debatable. But on the other hand, so has Florida State. Florida State has done the same thing. They've beat up on these ACC schools. Both teams go into an SEC school. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Florida State went into an SEC school. Louisville just played an SEC school. Both teams struggled. Let's be honest. Both teams struggled in their SEC matchups, but one of them was just able to find the win. But obviously, when those Florida and Kentucky matched up against each other, Kentucky dominated. So I would say Kentucky is a much better team than Florida. I just think it's genuinely what version of are we going to get the timid version of Louisville that we saw against Kentucky that was not the same team that we saw all year long? Or are we going to get that Virginia Tech team, you know, the Virginia Tech Louisville team that just went out, they didn't care, they were making crazy acrobatic interception plays, they were breaking off 40-yard touchdown runs. Like, that's what it's going to come down to. And we'll find out. I think we will find out in the first quarter. If not the first quarter, then definitely in the second quarter, what team we actually get from Louisville. I think it's also going to be a close game, not a shootout. Which also, I didn't think the Kentucky game was going to be a shootout, and it was. But I don't think it's going to be a shootout as well. It's going to come down to the second half, fourth quarter-ish. And, yeah. Me, personally, the game is going to be won by the turnovers. Can Louisville limit turnovers? Fumbles, which both of those fumbles against Kentucky were pretty, you know, like, they weren't bad fumbles. I guess Jack Plummer's was not the best, but I mean, Jawar Jordan's was not bad at all. So I think it's going to be the turnover battle. If Louisville can get those so-called lucky interceptions that I've seen in the past, where like just the guys standing at the right place at the right time, if they can get more of those than Florida State can, they will win that game. So I am as well locking in my answer. I think Louisville is going to win today as well.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm nervous, but I'm very excited. Just, it's our first conference championship that we've made it to, and if we can win, that's even better. Obviously, if we win, I'm pretty sure we lock the Orange Bowl. But if we lose, I'm pretty sure it's a little tricky.
Well, see, that's another. If you are looking at it that way, if that is what your ultimate goal is to make the Orange Bowl, and I'm sure there definitely is some Louisville fans out there that just want to make the Orange Bowl. That's the only thing they want to do. They don't care about the ACC Championship. You guys losing that game to Florida State might bump y'all out of the Orange Bowl.
I think it would, because if we're saying Florida State gets knocked out of the playoffs, however it may happen, then I think Florida State would go to the Orange Bowl, not Louisville.
So, I mean, your best bet, granted Florida State not making the playoffs, is you all beating Florida State and they just put you guys above Florida State.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting. That's another topic that I could go on about. That's going to be interesting how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So this one's a little underwhelming, especially since it's the last one of the night. There's Michigan, Michigan, Iowa. I just had a stroke there. I don't know what just happened. Michigan, Iowa.
I
don't see it being close.
The Iowa faithful, I've seen a couple things on social media. Iowa is very determined to win this game. It's going to be the same thing as last year. Purdue had such a good run to make the championship game last year, and they're not going to beat Michigan. And I see the same thing happening this year. I mean, I'm taking Michigan.
Yeah, I'm taking Michigan too. Although if Iowa beat Michigan, it would cause even more chaos. So that would be hilarious.
For the playoff picture, I want Georgia, I want Michigan, and I want Florida State all to lose. I want all three of those teams to lose because I just want to see what would happen, dude. You know how crazy it would be, man?
It'd be wild.
It'd be fun. That is one thing that I am going to miss about the 14 playoff is I love the debates, who's in and who's not in.
Yeah.
And we're still going to have that with the 12-team bracket, but it's just not going to be as like,
it won't be like it won't be as intense.
And you don't have to be, because like right now you're like, okay, the perfect of the perfect is getting into the playoffs. You have to be the most perfect all year long. Now you can have a couple mistakes. You can even have potentially 3 losses and still make the playoffs next year.
Yeah.
Depending on what the losses are and who you are.
Like if the 12-team playoff was this year, it would be interesting in the sense that if Louisville won, they could probably get it back in.
Well, I mean, honestly, to think about it, if Louisville lost today, there's still a case for them to get into the playoffs with 3 losses.
Well, we're ranked 15th right now. We'd probably get bumped down back into the 20s.
Do you think you drop all the way down to the 20s with a loss to Florida State?
Or maybe 18. But yeah, I think we'd drop, yeah.
I think you guys would potentially drop too, but I think there's still a way, depending on how everything would play out in a season, that an 18, if you're 18, ranked 18th in the last week, that you could still jump into the top 12. Potentially. It's still going to have that same kind of debate, who's in and who's not in, but I just don't think it's going to be as rich and as good as just the 4-team. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I guess
well,
games are going to be starting here fairly soon.
Yeah. You got anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. Let me turn my camera. Let me get my camera on so you guys can see exactly what I'm going to do here.
All right.
It's used down.
Oh, Miami.
Used down. Yeah. Miami got shit
basketball?
on.
Oh, yeah.
Shit on.
That was
the 8th team in the country?
You guys looked incredible against them. That was bad.
Purdue just lost yesterday, so they're not going to be number 1 anymore. Man, rank Kentucky number 1. I've been saying it since before college basketball even sent. They had us ranked like 16 or something like that. That's the most disrespectful rating that anybody has ever gave Kentucky. Now we're gonna prove it. Man, I could go on and on and on and on and on. We just beat the 8th team in the country by 22 points. They didn't even stand a chance, man. It's the disrespect, man. The disrespect. We're still not even the best team. People are still saying we're not the best team in the SEC. They got Alabama and Tennessee, both that are better than us. Both teams have 3 losses already. Or no. Tennessee has 3 losses. Alabama has 2 losses. Alabama has lost to some shit teams. I'm not even going to lie. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little ramped up about this because this is BS. It is straight BS.
Your only loss was to number 1 Kansas.
Number 1 Kansas, and it wasn't anybody could have won that game. Just somebody had to lose, and it was Kentucky.
Yeah, it was close too. It was super close.
Any given day, we could go out and beat Kansas, and on top of it, tonight Kentucky plays tonight, same time at Louisville. So I don't know how much we're going to be watching of that game. I don't think very much, but we're getting a new court and Aaron Bradshaw, who is might be our best player on a team. He's going to make his debut tonight. It has been confirmed. He is playing tonight.
Who do you guys play tonight?
Like UNC Williamton or something like that.
So
it's nothing serious. Nothing serious. But yeah.
What are you guys
Stop putting the
ranked right
disrespect
now?
on Kentucky. 12. That's crazy, man. Stop putting the disrespect on Kentucky. That's all I got.
All right, well, that's going to do it from us here at the Take His Whistle podcast. We appreciate you guys for listening, as always, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I know we're excited for the conference championships. I hope you guys are too, and we will see you guys in the next NFL episode.